time in his life, the 25-year-old pilot thought he was going to die, and not just stop breathing, but be blown into tiny smoldering fragments in a fiery explosion at the stern of the steel aircraft carrier. Every neuron in his brain indicated he was flying the F-14 Tomcat directly into the black ocean, as nothing but darkness loomed outside the windscreen. Trying to force the thought of death out of his mind, the pilot looked down into the cockpit and struggled to keep the display's needle centered, his breathing and heart rates increasing exponentially. At 3/4 of a mile, his backseat Rio keyed the mic and called the ball. 427 Tomcat ball 4.5. Pilot barely heard the transmission over his own labored breathing echoing rhythmically in his headset. The landing signals officer responded by telling the pilot to keep her coming. Trying to settle his nerves, the flyer breathed deeply, looked up, and caught the ship's lineup lights. His nerves did anything but settle, as the pilot still couldn't make out the silhouette of the carrier in the expansive sea of black. His Rio coaxed subtle airspeed corrections from the rear seat. At a 1/4 mile, the pilot scanned lineup and angle of attack, and still only saw the darkness interspersed with a handful of minuscule flickering lights. The pitch-black night sky merged with the black ocean, which melted into the black fantail. He nearly stopped breathing altogether as every cell in his body focused exclusively on raw survival. The pilot and Rio were seconds away from crashing down upon the pitching, rolling deck of the 300,000-ton USS Constellation, a mere 60 feet above the frigid Pacific. Fixating on the ball, angle of attack indicator, and lineup lights, the pilot made one last play to the left for a lineup correction before simultaneously feeling and hearing a tremendous jolt as the fighter jet thundered onto the deck of the big gray boat. Based solely on rote memorization and training, he ran the throttles to military power and was thrown violently forward into the harness straps as the jet's tailhook snagged the two-wire. It took a full 5 seconds and 2 yells over the radio from the LSO before the pilot exhaled and allowed his left hand to move the throttles back to idle. His thighs began twisting the jet into tension for the impending launch. The next 3 night traps were a blur. Later that night, while reflecting on the evening's events in the ready room, the pilot smiled widely, remembering the slider he had for dinner had actually stayed down. After surviving his first 4 night carrier landings, the pilot would be hard-pressed to sweat doing just about anything else that came his way for the remainder of his life. Anything, which would include training at Top Gun, flying in combat, arguing in front of the Supreme Court, or trying to save the richest man in